So Zelko and Din, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, man. We're super excited.
Yeah, thank you. Super excited too.
So we're doing an update on Ronin Dojo as well as chatting about Tanto. So just for listeners who are new and maybe they haven't heard as much about the privacy aspects of Bitcoin, Zelko, can you give us just an overview on the project and where it's at today?
Yes, of course. Yeah, so Ronin Dojo is a privacy-focused, completely free and open source node project. And our whole goal and aim is to give you all the tools as a Bitcoin user to be as private as possible. It has all of your own tools to, whether it's with hardware wallets using Sparrow or Specter, or whether it's with Samourai Wallet using Dojo, which is our main focus. And then also obviously whirlpooling, and whirlpooling can be done now via either Sparrow or Samourai Wallet. So we're super excited to have all these new capabilities. And our latest release actually just updated all of our versions, ElectRS, ElectRS server, and Specter got updated as well as Dojo. So we're pretty excited about everything that we've got coming, and then all the stuff that we have coming in the future. We're definitely really excited. It's a really cool project. And I think the best part is that we're finally, with Tanto, now that we started to do pre-sales, we're finally able to fund ourselves and keep ourselves going as a FOSS project and not have to rely on these big VCs to come in and kind of give us direction. So that's pretty exciting. And then I brought with me our hardware guy, Din, not to be confused with the actual Mandalorian, but yeah, so he's here. Dan, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Din. I'm originally from Switzerland, and I have this typical electric engineering background, what we usually learn in an apprenticeship when we are 16 years old. And I just ended up then as a automation engineer for Swiss and German companies the last 15 years in Asia for a commissioning engineer and semiconductor and the display industry. And that's very short about myself. Yeah.
Excellent. And so just for listeners, if you're new, when you want to act more privately in Bitcoin, part of that involves learning to run your own Bitcoin node and connect your wallet, and ideally use a wallet that has privacy-enabled techniques, and connect your own wallet to your own Bitcoin node. And so this is part of what the Ronin Dojo project is helping you do if you are willing to go down that pathway. And so, Zelko, perhaps you could just give an overview. What are the main pathways for people? So I suppose you could just explain for people if they want to build their own versus if they want to purchase the product. Could you just spell out what it looks like for them?
Yeah, sure. So we have a couple different routes now, a lot more than we used to. But so we have the Tanto that you can buy from shop.ronindojo.io. And that's a plug and play. You literally just plug in all the parts that you need, which is right there, your power source and your Ethernet, and it just, it'll load right up into the new Ronin UI. And then, otherwise we're also selling the exact same setup as a DIY kit through Mindfarm Buy. And he's actually going to be distributing worldwide. So anybody that wants to pull the trigger and they want to save a little bit of money, they can buy through him. And that comes with all of the Rock Pro 64 parts, which is our recommended hardware. That is a single board computer for people that don't know. It's a little bit more powerful than a Raspberry Pi, which is famous in the Bitcoin world. But it's still our flagship and what I would recommend. And then we also support users being able to run pretty much any single board computer that they have. We support with our images. Some, have a little bit more, technical hardware power issues, but we're always here to help people get through the process. And so, yeah, we try to eliminate as many barriers as there are for people to transition over. So, yeah, you can do it with a Raspberry Pi. You can do it with a Rock Pro 64. You can do it by buying a Tanto straight through us, or you can buy a DIY kit through Mindfarm Buy. So those are our main options right now.
Fantastic. And so for listeners, you might be thinking, well, some of the main options are to either run a node on your PC, on your box, or to use a dedicated machine for this. And this is where the Rock Pro 64, the Tanto, etc., these options come in a little bit. And so, Din, I know your focus is on the hardware. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, how you came up with or what your approach is around the Tanto from a hardware perspective?
It was actually a really long journey. So everything started like that. As I said, I'm like this engineer, like automation engineer, and I'm always used to build things which are like, they just need to run 24/7 and they have to be rock solid, right? So in kind of like just like 2 years ago or something like that, I could finally find some time to get my hands on all the node projects, right? I was like, okay, now I have some time. I need to have my own node, right? And I bought probably every single board computer, a couple of Raspberry Pis, and then also the Rock Pro. And I bought all the cases and started to play around with all those different implementations, Umbrel, MyNode, and of course also then the Ronin Dojo, and then I had my little box, and then usually it's always like a bit like a plastic case with a noisy fan or like some wires, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, I need a node, but I want to have something very solid. And I went to the local electronics store market. I mean, in Taiwan, this is pretty easy to pick up, and I got some like aluminium boxes from the shell. Was doing some drawings for myself, brought it over to a local tool shop and told them like, hey, can you cut this out? I need this block because I want to have a passive cooling and this and that. And then I had my little customized aluminium block box, not so fancy. And then I was like, okay, that's nice now. And I posted it on the Telegram groups, and sure enough, Zelko was just like there and like, hey, what's that? What are you doing here? Right. And it all started like this. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be honest. The funniest part about the whole experience was, being like, I think at that point in our time, right? Like, for Ronin, me and S2 kind of started this whole thing. We were, some people would be like, hey, we want to help, we want to contribute. And then they would come in and they would help for a little bit, and then they'd go back to their lives. And, that's kind of the nature of the FOSS community. But, so he came in, this Din Djarin, of course, like I'm a Star Wars nerd. So I was like, oh, I know that guy, Mandalorian. Cool. I was like, I like him. And then he said, he's like, oh, like I want to make a metal case for you guys. He's like, would you guys be open to that? I was like, yeah, I mean, like, I guess, sure, man. Like I didn't have my hopes up. And then I don't know, like within a few weeks, he came back with these like designs and drawings. And I was like, I mean, and this was not what you guys see now as Tanto, but I was still blown away. I was super excited and hyped up. And that's, I think, for the Ronin team, it kind of turned our project from like a hobby into a, like, we can actually, a hobby that we might be able to like, support ourselves to something that like, hey, we might be able to like do this for the long haul. We might be able to actually provide something that the Bitcoin community needs and is missing, which is, an actual nice product for a full node. And it's not to say that the other ones aren't nice, but this one is just a totally different feel. And so once I saw, especially the Tanto, I was like, we're onto something. And yeah, it was all kind of downhill from there. This guy has been like 10 steps ahead of the game. So it was pretty funny. I just like didn't believe that it was going to actually come to fruition.
Right. And that's the difference between a project and a project,
it's sort of like building up a business
sort of like
around
building
the
up a
FOSS
business
project
around the FOSS
and so
project here.
It might be that some of these projects start off as really just like a side hobby thing, and over time,
and
if there's enough community interest and growth around it, then people can start to get paid back for that work that they're doing, that they're contributing into the open source comments, as it were.
I mean, that's a really good point. It was, I mean, that was our intention from the beginning. We wanted to make things easier for Samourai users, and so we built something that was good for us, and then other people started using it, and that kind of led us into like how we decided to do this. Our product rollout is that we don't want anybody to be forgotten. We remember when, me and S2, we remember when the Red Beast or the Nodal Dojo first came out, and people getting priced out. Like, we remember that. And it's not, it's nothing against them. Like, they had a really good product, and they had, they did what they thought was right. And I definitely don't knock them for it at all. But that was kind of what started Ronin. And so we didn't want to forget that, we're a FOSS team whose whole idea and like identity revolves around the community and revolves around everyone being involved and no one getting priced out. So while we do have expensive products, and we're going to have expensive products, we're also always going to have free software. We're always going to be able to support different devices. We might not have the time to support as much detail on all platforms, but we're always going to support it. We're always going to allow it to run for the tinkerers and the people that want to do it. And so, yeah, we have that's kind of why we have that, the free software. We have the 3D printed cases for that community. We're going to have the DIY kits that you can just buy straight from Mindfarm Buy, or you can piece it together yourself. And then obviously the plug and play Tanto. And then we'll have another product. We'll have another top of the line product that we'll be shipping out later on this year, hopefully. But yeah, it's a big difference, I think.
I also just want to quickly jump into this FOSS aspect. I mean, so for me, it was kind of like, I mean, the whole timing was just right for me too, because I just got off of a project and I had time, right? And I really kind of like, when Zelko and his team started really serious about that, hey, can you do that for us? I was kind of like, oh, I mean, I'm not a software engineer, right? But I can do hardware. So looks like it's my time now to contribute to an open source project or to a Bitcoin, right? To me, as a Bitcoiner, I also saw my chance to give something back, right? And this is what I could actually do for this community, right? And that was really appealing for me too. And especially in the Ronin Dojo project, I could tell, there is no revenue stream, or this is really they don't have any funding, or it looks like. So, okay, I have time. I can do that. And I really saw it more as a give back to the Bitcoin community as a whole with my skills. And before I was always thinking, oh, you need to be a coder, right?
Zelko, I just want to go back to one comment earlier as well, just around the structure, the business, how to make it work. Now, I did an episode recently on VC funding and Bitcoin, and obviously there's quote-unquote crypto VC, and then there are Bitcoin-focused VC investors out there. In your case, Zelko, could you tell us a little bit about why you wanted to avoid that pathway, maybe why it was not the right choice for you?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that we necessarily were like anti funding, because I don't think that's really the case. I mean, especially once we kind of linked up with Din, and we had this legitimate product with a legitimate future, we were like, we needed funding, and we kind of knew it, but we did have some of our own personal money that we had kind of put in, and was keeping us afloat. We knew that we could kind of do it ourselves for a bit. Our biggest problem is because we did kind of reach out to a couple people, but so many VCs in the Bitcoin space that we talked to the first question that we get asked is, okay, so are you guys support Lightning, right? And we're like, no, we don't support Lightning. And they're like, oh, okay, well, it's in the roadmap. And we're like, no, it's not at the moment, like it's not something that we're focused on right now. Like we're the privacy node, like that's what we do. And so it's kind of, I would say that that's been like the major turnoff. And I know that there's going to be people out there that want to get in on this project. Like they're going to see it, it's going to get their hands on. But at the end of the day, we are very selective on who we want invested into our project. Like we want people who are on board with our vision and not people that want to try to steer or tell us what to do. And at the end of the day, if we could even do it without any VC money at all, because we're able to sustain ourselves, then, like that's even better. But if we did need VC funding, like it would have to be someone that aligns with our ethos and aligns with our mindset, which is definitely against the grain. And I know that for the Bitcoin community, but I think that's kind of what the biggest piece was that we're, as a node project without Lightning, and we're the only ones that don't have Lightning. I think that's kind of been a point of contention, if I had to guess.
I see. Yeah, totally fair. And so, as I understand it, then, as you're saying, you would be open to it. It just needs to be the right person or right group of investors with the right mindset, or at least an aligned mindset in terms of the privacy focus. And I suppose that's not impossible. I mean, obviously, it's a different project. Samourai Wallet itself has other outside investors, but without having Lightning. And so maybe that's something where Ronin Dojo as a project aligned with the Samourai Wallet team, then maybe that's also an angle down the future. I wanted to also talk a little bit about the hardware aspects of this. So Din, probably this is for you. I know that depending on the way the node has been set up, or let's say how long that node has been running, there can be reliability issues. And I know, Zelko, you've probably got things to add on this as well, but let's start with you, Din. Can you give us your thoughts on why Rock Pro 64 as opposed to, say, Raspberry Pi as your preference?
I mean, there were kind of like different aspects. I mean, Rock Pro or the Rock Pro 64 was kind of like really nice because we could use an M2 SSD storage, which you could connect to this X4 SO connector. Like it had like this native PCI SO connector, right? And that for sure, it enables you to sync up the blockchain for the initial block download much quicker.
So Din, just if you could explain that just for listeners, what is the M2 SSD? Why is that a superior choice than some of the alternatives?
Yeah, I mean, like, so the Raspberry Pi guys, they usually use the external USB 3 so connector and just run that things with an external hard drive. And when you have like a internal connection straight into the board, that you have a quicker bus. It just goes faster. But that said, this is just like advantage what you have in the beginning, like the first, maybe you save 1 to 3 days until you are ready to go. But so we also saw that when you use these traditional 2.5 inch drives, I mean, you need more space, you have more cables, it just gets way more easier for the design. And the Rock Pro, I don't really know actually why they chose the Rock Pro as the flagship. I mean, it is more powerful, but the lucky thing was actually like that. I mean, during this chip shortage, surprisingly, the Pine 64 company, also those guys, they produced the Rock Pro 64 board. They don't have any supply issues. Where you see the Raspberry Pis, they even increased the price. And when I ask my friends back in Europe or so, and they're always like, oh, it's out of stock, and you don't have the problem. I can't explain actually why this is, but that's also kind of like a nice thing, right? What else? I mean, Zelko, do you?
Yeah, Zelko, let's hear from you on any of your thoughts around hardware selection.
Yeah, so I mean, we originally decided to make our flagship the Rock Pro 64 mostly because it was faster, it had more computing power and more RAM by default at the time. But the computing power, the CPUs, that's really that was like the seller for me. And then what he keeps talking about with the PCIe, these connectors that are available on a Rock Pro 64. It's the same thing that you have on a desktop computer. And so these NVMe cards or these M.2, it's just a really small stick. So one, it saves a lot of space, but it's also extremely fast. It's like the next generation. So most people are used to seeing that 2.5 inch SATA 3 SSD, like that solid state drive. So that's already faster. It's a lot faster than like the hard drives that we used to see, but it's the next one is extremely fast. So the ones that we have in the Tanto, the M.2, I want to say the average that we're getting is for the entire block download is about 72 hours, or less. Generally it's between 48 and 72, depending on how fast your internet is. So it's a huge like performance increase. And so having that capability was massive. And then kind of just fell into place with like Pine being like really good as far as like taking care of the chip shortage and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just a really beefy piece of hardware. And it's really not that much more. It's about equivalent. If you were to buy a Raspberry Pi 8 GB RAM version, it's about the same price. So, in my opinion, I can add RAM. Most people might not know that, but you can utilize that solid state drive as a, add swap from there and just kind of increase your overall RAM capability. I'm not that worried about RAM. I'm more worried about how fast my computer can run and how much computing power I have. So that's kind of why we went that way.
Yeah, so just for listeners who are following along and maybe you're not as familiar, I think if you were to look at this space a few years ago, a common thing would just be to have a Raspberry Pi with, and some people were just doing even with spinning hard disk, right? So really like the cheap hard drives. And then over time, I think we've seen a shift there happen because of things like the speed of processing, the growth in the size of the blockchain, the ability to download and sync the Bitcoin blockchain quickly, and also to stay up to date. So let's say if we're using Samourai Wallet and we're using Whirlpool, we've got lots of UTXOs, unspent transaction outputs, and those coins are continually needing to be remixed. And so having hardware that's more suited for the task, I think that's essentially the evolution we've seen. So as you were saying, we've gone from people using Raspberry Pi 3 and Raspberry Pi 4 with spinning hard drives to then upgrading to those SATA, the 2.5 inch. And now we're talking about the next evolution, which is trying to use the more advanced NVMe M.2 SSD style in order to give better performance and arguably better reliability. So if you guys could just comment a little bit on your thoughts there around the reliability, the uptime aspects, comparing, the current generation or this new generation versus some of the older stuff.
I like kind of laughing. I'm thinking about back in 2016 and like using that Raspberry Pi 2. I'm not going to date myself and say that I'm like this, 2013 OG or anything, but I remember, right? I remember, using a Raspberry Pi 3 and using a regular hard drive and like following a guide. The instructions were like, yeah, it takes about, 2 to 3 weeks to download the blockchain. And I was like, holy crap. I guess I'll just come back and check on this later. It's amazing to see that hardware curve that we have. And I have no doubt that everyone is going to be following in the same steps. That's the curve, right? Like as technology increases, and the blockchain gets bigger, technology increases with it and it gets cheaper as more space is required. So yeah, it's really cool to see where we're at right now and being able to download the blockchain and people like getting upset when it takes more than like 4 days. And you're like, if only you knew the real pain, the real struggle, But, I'm like, come back to me when you've done like 45 IBDs by yourself, just for fun. But yeah, that's my opinion. I think it's just really like remarkable to see how far we've come. But Din, what's your thoughts on that?
Now, Maure, about your question about M2 NVMe SSD, I mean, like the spec says they last for like 1,500,000 hours, right? So I just did the math, when you calculate the slide, it's like 170 years or something. I mean, like, it's crazy, right? I mean, like a M2 NVMe SSD is super reliable and they don't really break, right? So, and that's the nice thing about it. You are just operating in a layer 1 solution. There is actually no need anymore to have a RAID configuration because those drives, they don't break. Probably your board will break, but not the drive, right? So that's a really cool thing about this technology. Yeah.
Just for like, I quickly did the math on that. Over, say if you did 1 million hours, I think I did the math right. Yeah. 1 million hours, that's 114 years. But so the blockchain will expand past that at some point eventually. Maybe, I don't know. If Lightning takes off, layer 2, we're good, right? And then the blocks don't get bigger. I don't know. Is that how it's supposed to work? No, I guess not. I guess I'm just kind of being an asshole. That's my bad. Apologies.
Oh, but like they're good, right? So you don't really need to worry about that they break, right? So that's the cool thing about those.
It's okay. Yeah. That's always why Matt gets to say that. Matt Odell gets to say that the blocks aren't full anymore. It's just Lightning adoption. So he's winning that battle.
Well, yeah, I think what we'll see is there will be some commerce and people who shift to other layers, and that might include Lightning, that might include other things, but that will also make it more affordable for people who are staying on chain. So that is a benefit there for the people who are just on chain only, at least for now.
Honestly, I'm like, it's a win all the way around. If we like make on-chain fees and that fee market never comes to fruition, like I think everybody wins. If you want to be on chain, you can be on chain. If you don't, it's a means to, we're all working to the same goal, right? Like whether you're a hardware wallet guy or if you're a Lightning guy or privacy CoinJoin on-chain person, we're all trying to make Bitcoin better, right? So that's what's important to me.
Yeah. So bringing it back to that. So as we were saying around the hardware, what people might have done in years gone by, or if they were using a Raspberry Pi as opposed to like a full box, they might have had more issues if they were trying to support lots of users. So for example, in the, to use our friend Matt Odell's term, the Uncle Jim, if they're trying to be the Uncle Jim for their friends and run the node for their friends, but then if they're trying to do that off, say, a Raspberry Pi or a more low-powered device, that can get more difficult, particularly in the case where those users have a lot of CoinJoin and remix going on, because then there's a lot of coins that machine now has to track, and it's got to obviously search through its memory, and it's got to keep all of that updated and keep rescanning, or if there is rescanning, then that can be more problematic or a little bit more difficult. So if you guys could comment on that and where you're seeing that today in terms of, using the more advanced hardware and, being able to support deeper wallets, let's say.
Yeah, so for like the hardware, I mean that's why that computing power is so important, right? Like if you're going to be an Uncle Jim, you definitely want to be running something like a Rockpro 64, or depending on how many people that you are running it for, I would even say that having a dedicated desktop is probably the most realistic option. Like something with a lot of RAM, a lot of power, a lot of multiple. As much power as you can get when it comes down to it. Like if you were going to be hosting 10 active CoinJoin users or more, like 10 active Dojo users, you definitely want those people to all have fast uptimes and everything else. But for us, I mean, if you're supporting 4 or 5, 6 people, I haven't seen any issues with Rockpro 64. And I haven't really tested the upper threshold. I probably should have, but I will definitely do that before the next show. It's definitely not something that I've seen the issues with And I have some super deep wallets. Like, I'll be very honest. I keep my wallets active, and I have not had any. I have at least 4 or 5 myself, and I haven't had any issues with, the Rock Pro 64. So, it's a really solid piece of hardware. And, hopefully we see a trend towards that now that the Raspberry Pi has kind of been seen as, has had that like moment of, flaw. It was like the tinkerer's board, but, really when it comes down to it, the fact that chip shortage hit them so hard and prices went up so high, I'd like to see a shift to something more powerful. And it makes like transitions easier, even if people transition away from us. If, Umbrella or MyNode actually does support Rock Pro 64. But like, if everyone supported the Rock Pro 64 and someone wanted to leave our project, I'm okay with that. Now they don't have to buy two different devices just to run 2 different nodes. Or, if they want to transition from one project to us, that's even better. It does suck when people are like, I want to run the flagship, but I have to wait until I can afford it. It sucks when you hear that, but that's also what makes me happy that we do support so many different platforms.
Excellent. And Din, anything to add there?
The Rock Pro is a really good choice. And as Zelko said, right? Buying the Tanto doesn't mean like you just can run Ronin Dojo. MyNode works too. And I also know that the BTC Pay server guys, they have a project, it's called Hack Zero. And they also use the Rock Pro 64 actually as their main testing node device. The Rock Pro is well known on the other projects too. It's just like the whole buzz was so big about the Raspberry Pi because Umbrella is Raspberry Pi only.
And so the other point that was interesting is around switching between different node implementations, let's say. So if there's Raspberry Blitz, Umbrel, MyNode, Ronin Dojo, how are you thinking about that? Like, is that, and maybe this is more of a software question, so maybe Zelko, you're the one to ask. How are you thinking about that idea of making it possible for people to transition between different projects? Is that something you're thinking about, or is that not really not really a goal?
No. It's definitely a goal. We're actually, like Woe, one of our main backend devs, he's actually implemented and pretty much finished the backend development for this node migration script. And we've also been working with the, what's his name? Aaron Dews, or I don't know if I pronounced it right, but sorry, Aaron. But he actually kind of hit all the FOSS node guys up and, wanted to work on something together, and that being one of them. Because we're all kind of in the same boat where we're like, hey, it's crappy for users as a whole if they want to switch and then they have to re-download the blockchain. Like, we all write our scripts to just like delete, if it's not in a specific directory, like a specific location on your hard drive, it's set to just delete it and then start fresh when that doesn't need to be the case. So that's something that we have been working on, and we're hoping for the next, either probably not this release, which should be by the end of the month, but most likely the following release, it'll all be done. It's just hard because you need testers, so to test that out perfectly, it's like I have to reinstall like MyNode or, Raspberry Blitz or Umbrella or whatever, and then switch over to Ronin. So it's a little bit more of a tedious testing process, but yeah, we're right there at the end. So we're excited to be done with that as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the Bitcoin community, at least the FOSS Bitcoin community, the free open source community, is focused on this and is even thinking about this, because typically what happens with software is people get locked in, or it's known as quote unquote vendor lock-in. And so in this case, it's like we're seeing the projects actually try to cut against that and go against the idea of vendor lock-in so that people actually do have a choice, and they're just kind of competing as projects on their own merits, but in an open source way, competing but cooperating in a sense.
Yeah. That kind of came down to like, the mutual respect that we all had for each other. I think last year, between the like big debates and stuff that we all had, I think a lot of mutual respect came out of it. Like, we already had kind of that mutual respect, but it it really grew to the next level. And, even for some of the other guys, I know, the Start 9 Lab guys, I really like those guys, despite the fact that they're not FOSS, like Matt Hill and his whole team. I met a couple times in person, and they're really good guys. They're just like, they made a business decision. So even with them, like, we've helped each other on both sides. He asked me about the Rock Bro 64, and, I've asked him some different business like tips and stuff that he had insight on. And, so it's cool. It's just because you don't have a FOSS license doesn't mean that you don't have to respect somebody, but I think it's really the approach that everybody has, how willing you are to work with other people, and, how willing you are to, share stuff, because that's really what it comes down to, is like with FOSS, like, you're trying to share your code, you're trying to share work together to benefit the community as a whole. If you don't care about the Bitcoin community, like, what are you really doing? You're just selfish. If you care more about your profits than you do about the community as a whole, then you're kind of a dick. But yeah, I don't know. That's it's been cool to see everyone work together, for sure.
Yeah, that's great to see. And so just maybe if you could spell out what it looks like for customers, like, let's say they purchase a Tanto or they install Ronin Dojo, let's say they purchase the parts and they set it up. What does it look like in terms of the interface and getting set up to, let's say, pair your mobile phone Samourai Wallet with your Ronin Dojo?
Yeah, so it's super exciting. It'll be the process, which, man, it used to be super long. So now it's going to be, with the release at the end of the month, it's going to be, turn on your node with the image on there. If you have the Tanto, it's already going to be in there. And just for record, for anybody that like bought a Tanto and wants to not trust us and verify, which is totally cool, you can unscrew the back, reflash that device yourself, and then go for it, just for the record. So yeah, you plug it, you start up your device, and then you log into ronindojo.local or your IP address, HTTP, your IP address, and your Ronin UI will be up and running for you. You'll create a new password, and from there you're in. And it's going to automatically start downloading Dojo in the blockchain for you. If you're a brand new user, it's already going to start downloading Dojo for you. You don't have to do anything anymore.
So for people who aren't familiar, you're basically plugging this into your local power and your network, obviously, and then it's downloading, and you can connect to it off your, like, you are interfacing with it on the web using your laptop or your computer, and you can then check the settings and do things on there, and also, obviously, pair your Samourai Wallet on your mobile phone. So that's kind of the high level there. In terms of managing things, like, let's say you need to do a rescan, or let's say you need to do different things, can you talk through like what some of those processes look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have like a roadmap for just the UI as a whole, but for this release, what you're going to be able to do. So on your main dashboard, number one, it's brand new, totally revamped. Hopefully everyone really likes it. I love it. I think it's sexy, but that's just me. So you're going to be able to see like the status of Dojo, the Bitcoin core, like if it's 100% synced up or not, how many transactions are in the mempool, what block height you're at, when the last block came in, all that stuff is going to be on there. And then your uptime of your actual system. So how many days or hours your actual device has been left on. As far as maintenance and stuff that you can actually do with it, right? So we have the XPub tool. So if you are trying to scan in a XPub from an existing Samourai wallet, you'll be able to plug that in right into your mobile phone. You can copy it from there and just put it over, or you can use whatever you want and as to copy and paste it into this into the UI. So you'll be able to check the XPub and then rescan it, and it'll import it for you. We have the transaction tool, so you'll be able to check transaction IDs. And then if it's not this release, it'll be next release, but you'll be able to utilize Boltzmann with a visualizer, which is, for people that don't know what Boltzmann transaction tool is, it's or Boltzmann calculator. It's what kycp.org, knowyourcoinprivacy.org. It's what they use, and what OXT does for. Yeah. It's what they use for calculating entropy and how private your transaction was. So specifically what we're going to have implemented is a visualizer for Boltzmann. So you have a transaction, you want to see how many links you have or how private it was. You're going to be able to see it from your own Ronin UI. So that'll be pretty cool. And then, you can rescan blocks and pretty much do everything that you need to with your dojo right here. And you can check your logs. You can copy and paste your logs straight from the UI. You can even send offline transactions. Well. Yep. Updates will come straight through the UI now. It'll pop up on the top when it's ready for you to update. And for those people that are like, cold storage or offline transaction people, if you have a signed transaction, you can actually pop that in. You can copy the hex format and you can broadcast your transaction from your node instead of trusting someone else's node. And you can go in and change your passwords and all that kind of stuff right from there. So, and again, we're going to have more features that we're going to roll out for this UI in the following months. But this is step one, a very exciting step. I wanted to be able to show you, Stephan, but you blocked that ability, so it's okay. Next time.
We'll do that another time because this one's just audio only. And with the support for Specter and Sparrow, could you just touch on that as well? So for users of Specter Desktop or Sparrow, what can they expect to see?
So we just updated to Specter 1.2.7, which has been a really awesome update. And again, you can access that via local or via Tor. Your credentials will show you exactly where to go. And the other one is Sparrow, which I'm super excited about. And I am a little partial towards Sparrow. Obviously they implemented Whirlpool. Craig is an awesome dude who's doing really cool stuff. BIP 47, like everything that like Samourai Wallet users have been like saying, like, why has no one else implemented this stuff? And finally it happened. So it's pretty cool to see. But, with Electrum Rust Server 0.9.4, we've seen really good results. I know there's been like a heated debate between Electrum Rust Server and Electrum X. And as of right now, that was the downside to Electrum X is just how long it takes to actually like index everything. So we're kind of exploring different options, and it is significantly faster once you have it up and running. Like instead of 10 to 15 minutes, it's 7 seconds. But it's something that we have to look at as far as like a full user option, if that's something that we want to look at. But we're excited. And then from the Tanto perspective, right? Din, did you want to just quickly touch on like the design piece? Like a lot of the hardware stuff, like he's, like Din's main focus is like the design, right? The design of the Tanto, the box, the inside, how everything is laid out. So I wanted to highlight real quick on like why you chose that design, the way it is on the outer box, and how that related to like Sparrow and Spectrum or Specter.
Oh yeah, sorry. As the software guys have a roadmap, we also have kind of like the roadmap for the Tanto. So that means like, when you look inside the case, you see a lot of stuff which are kind of like holes and screws. We are working on upgrade. There are some requirements from the software guys say we want to do this, we want to do that, and we are working on it. And there will be some hardware upgrades that Tanto buyers can actually really utilize that thing, right? From the hardware design at the moment, it's actually pretty clear that the whole case is whole heatsink. So that means you don't have that fan so anymore, which is the last mechanical part who actually could break. And we just kept it very simple, right? Also like the power and the reset button. Usually you don't want to touch by accident. So you have to kind of like go in with the Allen key when you want to do that. And the light indicator is a request. We actually got it from Matt Orell. He said like, look, I just want to see like when it's blinking, it's not ready. And when it's on, when it's shiny, I know I can use it, right? And it's simple as that, and we just did it, right? Keep things simple. Yeah.
The light thing is really cool. I'm not gonna lie. Like, as like a normal person, I like the LED light, especially, when we get it to where it's going to be programmed, right? That when you get a Whirlpool mix, it's going to like flash or do something cool, or it's going to, maybe one day we'll have it set to like Tony Stark, and it's going to be like, Jarvis is going to tell you that you have a Whirlpool mix or some secret code so that you don't like dox yourself that you got a Whirlpool mix, like something cool. That's the goal. We want to make privacy sexy, and that's goes a lot. Even with the LED light, it goes right.
Awesome. Just around, if anyone's got questions around support, I know this is something you previously were offering. Is that still the offering now in terms of people who want to pay for premium support, or how does support work for people who might be looking to either purchase the product or set it up for themselves and get support?
Of course. Yeah. So, we have a model right now, which is we have a silver and a gold premium support. And so what we do with that, it's gold is 2 months, silver is 1 month. And you get that like dedicated I don't want to call it handling because it almost like kind of like sounds belittling. I don't think it is because I was a handheld person. So, but yeah, it's that dedicated one-on-one time or as much time as you need. And so, yeah, you get 2 months for gold, 1 month for silver, and that's our current model. We are looking to actually do something brand new, which is it's going to actually be able to open up to the community a little bit more. And it's going to be kind of like a bounty type option that we might do, or one-on-one, like, 30-minute calls, etc. kind of thing. The whole idea, with support is that you want users to feel they're important, because they are. I've spent many hours, especially in the beginning of my journey. That's how I kind of got to the knowledge base that I did, was through helping other people. But if I didn't have other people help me, I wouldn't have been able to learn anything that I did. So, with a good support model, it's all about making sure that the people feel like they're getting what they paid for. And we have a lot of people that actually just pay for support just to, help pay our program, help pay for us to keep the lights on. So, we appreciate all the people that have done that. And yeah, we haven't finished ironing out all the details on our new support model, but when we do, it's going to be really cool. And my partner S2, he's all in on making that plan. That's kind of his baby. But yeah, so we do have those support models right now, and you can pay with Bitcoin. It's actually the only way that we accept support payment. Thank God. Fiat is terrible.
Yeah, that's cool to see. So that'll be good. I think those are probably the key questions I had for you guys. But if you had any closing thoughts for listeners, and maybe if you could spell out for them why they should consider Ronin Dojo, consider using CoinJoin and privacy techniques. And of course, where can they find you?
Cool. Hey, Din, you want to go first?
I mean, the closing on my side, I'm super thankful for that once we launched it after Christmas, they just started to buy it, and I was like, wow, super thankful for that. Even we are still building our Ronin Dojo website, so brand new with all the details and stuff. I'm really looking forward for a super exciting year, because we do have a roadmap on the hardware side for sure. And the Tanto is the middle tier. There will be a flagship called the Katana, and we also want to create something for really a nice entry point that nobody is left out. That's actually my goal and my task for this year.
Yeah. And Zelko?
Yeah, so to kind of jump off what he was saying, like, we appreciate all the support that we got, with people buying these things. It's a real, I guess, eye-opener to realize that, that we've worked so hard and put all this effort between, Din with his case design and all the hardware pieces, and then us being able to actually finish the software, do everything that we've envisioned, and to have the community support us the amount that they did. was amazing. And so we really appreciate everything that the community has done for us. And I know that Stephan, you were there in the beginning, like you saw where we started. So I'm hoping by the end of the month, when you see this next one, you're going to be like, holy crap, like these guys have come a long way, because it sure feels like that. And, we really wouldn't be here without the community. We really are a FOSS team who legitimately, if we didn't have people come help us, I don't know where we would be. We'd probably still be learning a lot of code and still just passionate about privacy. So yes, support our FOSS team, whether that's steel plates or whether that's, running a full node, buying a Tanto, or, just coming in and chatting with our team. It's all about giving back in some way or shape or form. That's what Bitcoin's about. And that's what, free and open source software is about. It's about giving back. So, I appreciate you having us on, Stephan. And we're excited to see how all the feedback is from when people get these awesome devices in their hands. They're going to love it. And hopefully everyone gets excited too.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks very much for joining me, Zelko and Din, and listeners, go check out ronindojo.io. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Stephan.
Thanks, man.